lot of people driving out to go home because they'd been up all night doing the hackathon, and a lot of people sort of headed back to their desks. So obviously, a lot of people in there are very invested in what happens once that stock starts trading, but I think they're watching it from their laptops, and the mood is pretty calm in there right now.
Guys, apparently we could have it at any moment now. We've just got a flash coming through from NASDAQ. It will be at 11:30, so within possibly the next 3 seconds. That's what's just hit the wires. It could be now.
It's 11:30 right now, guys. 11:30. That's what the headline said. We should expect the first trade at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It has passed that mark so far. Still
but it's
no
an indication
evidence.
they still believe they're on track. It's just a delay rather than a problem that could...
And we are,
there we go, look!
There we have it. Facebook opening for trade.
42.
43, 43.
$43 a share, up 13.1%.
So we
$43
priced at
a
39,
share.
Priced at 39, open at 42.
38 $38 a share. And now, as you see it right there, $42, and let's call it 43 was the opening trade on Facebook. It might have been 42.90, I think, where they actually opened it.
I think it's 42.05.
Was it 42.05,
Well,
Bob?
that's what I have on my bridge machine, 42.05.
It was, and we see it, well, now it's there. Now it is officially a public company available for anybody to buy shares should they desire to do so.
And we should note the champagne is flowing here at the NASDAQ market site. We do have some officials joining us here within this fishbowl from where we are broadcasting, including Bob McCooey and our guest J.D. Moriarty of Bank of America, who just toasted, actually, with their champagne glasses.
Jim, 42.43, what do you reckon? 42.43.
Look, it's not bad. I mean, obviously, I think that the volume's only 85 million. I would have expected more volume. This is a sign that there's not a lot of flipping going on. I think that's positive. It's a nice bump from where it did come public, but I got to tell you guys, if this thing goes below 40, it is going to bring out sellers, not buyers. That's my level to worry about the sellers coming in, not buyers.
Right. Hey, Jim, when you're taking a look at how this thing trades through the afternoon, I mean, it is 11:30. It is the European close, we should note. We closed at the lowest levels of the day in Germany. Will that have an impact on the rest of the day in terms of how FB trades?
I think that if we see Apple go negative, okay, if we see gold reverse, gold's been going up, usually a sign that maybe something big's in the works positive over Europe, then what will happen is a lot of the institutions that got stock will say, you know what, I'll revisit this thing on Monday, because that trade's been going on for some time, which is like, let's lock some things in, and probably nothing good happens over the weekend, something bad, and it's a different trade, So yes, I expect selling, not buying, just if it goes below 40.
Okay, 82 million shares traded in the first 30 seconds. The 42.01.
You know, Simon, I'm sort of looking at things again, and I think we could say now that the reason we were delayed was selling orders came in. There was more selling once you got the initial indication of the print. Remind me, guys, where were we at?
45 is where our first...
I think it was, but 44 was where we went out. We went out at 44, and then we started to get then it went down to 42.
No, 45 at first was
45
was the first.
The initial sort of lockdown brought in selling, and I don't think, and David, I don't think it was retail selling. There was a retail feeling amongst some of the biggest brokers in this country that retail just wanted to hold. They said they wanted to hold. They said they wanted to hold, and you see where we are in terms of. I think we're at the low print now of the day.
Yeah. I'm curious what your thoughts are, Gary, in terms of Facebook sucking the oxygen out of the room. We mentioned this earlier in the show, but as we are sitting here, technology overall is weaker. Apple has turned around, is pairing its gains for the session, and we're seeing a lot of large cap technology down for the day.
Well, forget Facebook. It's been a terrible week. The news associated with everything this week, we were, you know, obviously we're focused so much on Facebook. Europe had one of the worst weeks that we've seen going back to the fall of last year. The JP Morgan news, I guess JP Morgan was probably a little bit happy about what's really going on with Facebook, because the news that came out last night, in terms of the size of this book, everything else again being equal, very negative.
But there was a time when we thought that Facebook would re-enliven the stock market.
Yeah.
The headlines tomorrow on this are not going to be spectacular. It's not like the other IPOs where, you know, the headlines were phenomenal, the pictures were phenomenal. This, for market sentiment after a tough week, this is not great.
Simon, I can't believe this thing is going to trade back to 38, but as David said, if these people that are telling me they think it will are right, then it's going to be a very, very different
And how
narrative.
wrong to suggest 39 then yesterday when they right at the end when they were going to try and raise the price. Well, nobody wonders what they were told in response.
38. Listen, it looks like they priced it very well.
Yeah.
The stock, the big story is Facebook, a social phenomenon we haven't seen. As Bill Gurley said, a company that comes along once every 10 years in Silicon Valley is now a public company.
And
that's the big story. The smaller story tomorrow, or perhaps right now, is that on its opening, it's after trading for 5 minutes, it's only up 6%.
The capital market story for me here is that I do not recall seeing the type of allocations that people put in for that they actually got them on this deal, David.
I believe we want to go to Kayla Tausche back at headquarters, who's been on the phone this morning in light of the trading delay. Kayla.
Yeah, Melissa, I just want to comment on the levels that we're seeing trading right here, right now, up about 6%. And the sources that I spoke to this morning who were on the deal were saying this is going to be a reasonable day of trading. They're aiming for a range of 5 to 10% to the upside because GM was the last deal of comparable size like this with a comparable retail allocation. That traded 500 million shares in its first day and traded up about 5% on that opening day. They're expecting something a little bit bigger than that because of the retail interest and the name recognition of Facebook, and of course it being a tech company, and you see higher volume associated with those stocks just on the face of it, but they are expecting it to trade within a 5 to 10% range from the expectations I'm hearing from some of the underwriting sources.
Well, yeah, that means they certainly priced it well, and it would seem, Kayla, in a lot of ways. But, I think watching the stock trade right around the $40 level, one has to admit that's a surprise, given at least what seemed to be a huge demand out there in the aftermarket, potentially. And
It's about to break 40.
Yeah.
It's about to break down.
I mean, I think that if we had to place prior to it opening, if we had placed wagers on where this thing would be trading at this time, however many minutes in, the only person who would have won if Price is Right rules govern if somebody said above. Because I don't think anybody would have thought $40.
20 minutes ago,
Yeah.
when I showed you this note that a number of professionals who were selling right at the open expected this thing to test and break the syndicate bid today, I think I was as surprised, Melissa. You know me.
Yeah.
When I looked at you,
My jaw dropped
Yeah.
when I saw that email that came in.
And we'll, again, this is you get to these equilibrium points right now. If you really love this thing at 38, you're a mutual fund manager. You're probably looking at the number right now. You say to yourself, I don't want to be the one to go out there and put a bid in for 2 million shares at 40. But you sort of say to yourself.
So if we come back to this active campaign that the CFO had to increase the amount of shares that were put on the market, that were priced last night at 38, what do we now make of that? Is that an indication of negativity because so many sellers sold out? Peter Thiel springs to mind? Or do we actually say the CFO's done a great job in putting those extra shares on the
Let me just
market?
answer that real quick. Forget the name is Facebook. If you go to a venture capitalist investor and you say you can monetize your stake in a company at 20 times projected revenues, do you want to hit that bid? Forget the name is Facebook. That venture capitalist is going to hit that bid every day. So when they had the opportunity to sell more shares, of course they did.
I want to go back out to Carl in Menlo Park.
Well, although we're here in Menlo Park, I just think the most interesting shot is right there in Times Square. I mean, just from an optics standpoint, when was the last time you saw people in this country literally line the streets to see where a stock was going to trade? I think it's just a vivid illustration of the impact that this IPO has right now. Well, guys, I want to bring in our next guest, portfolio manager of the First Hand Technology Value Fund, which currently holds 600,000 shares of Facebook. He's also Chief Investment Officer of First Hand Capital Management. Kevin Landis joins us once again here on Squawk on the Street. Kevin, good morning once again.
Good morning to you.
As I recall, your cost basis was somewhere in the low 20s. What's your reaction to basically a $40.04?
Well, low 30s, but yeah, I wish low 20s. I'm surprised that it feels a little bit weak, but I guess I'd say with stocks you should expect sort of first day crazies, and we got a different flavor of the crazies than I was expecting.
You've been asked a lot about insider selling, and I saw some quotes this morning in which you said, look, who's going to sell if not the insiders?
Right.
How do you explain away the aggressiveness of some of these sellers this morning?
Well, I think probably the most trenchant comment this morning was people actually getting the allocation that they asked for and kind of quietly saying to them, well, I didn't mean I really wanted all that. And that leads to selling perhaps half your allocation at the open and putting that money in your pocket. So, you can analyze the trading dynamics all day long, right? I mean, there are people who make a career of it. I think the stock will find its footing. There'll be still a lot of retail investors who want to own this that don't own it yet. And, I guess all you can say is when you have lots and lots of banks and lots of people involved, you can't expect discipline. But then again, ultimately, you have to put the stock out in the market, and markets aren't disciplined. They're herds, and the herd eventually gets it right, but sometimes it lurches around before it gets there.
Yeah, sometimes they call them herds, sometimes they call them lemmings. Listen, with the lockup expiration and so much discussion of how aggressive that is, how unusual it is, when do you think the stock really starts to trade in a clean fashion, based more on longer-term valuations, even while those also may be cloudy? When do we start looking at the market really taking a look at the value of the business?
Well, I think look at it this way: 6 months or a year from now, this will trade like a big cap tech stock and like a blue chip. And between now and then, we'll have moments like this where people are trying to head fake each other and anticipate everybody else's anticipation.
Defending the 40
like
handle.
Because
they know that if it goes below 40, it's not going to see 40 again for a long time. It's going to see 30.
And finally, Kevin, year end, you see it above or below $40?
If it goes negative, oh my God.
Be surprised if it wasn't higher. Would have been surprised before. Still, we're happy to see a successful IPO, and we're happy to see the company itself is still on track, and I feel pretty comfortable with our investment.
All right, well, we got to get through today before we get to the end of 2012. Kevin, good to talk to you again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Kevin Landis in San Jose. Melissa?
All right, Carl, and of course we're watching a lot of the Facebook-related stocks this morning. We should note that Zynga shares have been halted. This is a circuit breaker that kicked in. It did a trade last down 13%. It hit the lowest level, 52-week low, in fact, $7.08. So we're watching that, see if that will reopen for trade. But again, Zynga shares halted for trade. Of course, it gets a significant portion of its revenue from Facebook. And the stock at last trade was down more than 13%. Meantime, we have to take a break here. Quick one, though. Much more Facebook coverage in our interview with Bob McCooey, the head of listings here at the NASDAQ. Straight ahead.